Hello, and this is Shashi, and this is the Silverfox Hustle podcast, the football talk episode. And this is an episode where I just go away from the usual. I speak about football, specific stuff, the beautiful game, and sometimes I have a guest in the show. And today I have a guest on the show now. But before that, just don't forget to click on the follow button. We are on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, as well as YouTube. Subscribe to that as well, and tell me who do you want me to speak to, and then I'll try my best. Now, as I said, today we'll talk about football. I want to talk to this man over here. I have a guest. He's the head coach of Balestier Khalsa Football Club. He is the former technical director of Football Association of Malaysia, the FAM, former TD of FFA Centre of Excellence in Australia, and also Football Queensland. He was also a coach and TD of SC Cambuur back in the Netherlands, Holland. Obviously, he was a professional footballer as well. Welcome to the podcast, Mr. Peter Deru.
Thanks for having me.
It's always a pleasure. Now, you came to Singapore last season.
Yes.
Yeah? How has it been like?
Well, I was before I started Balestier, I was already in Singapore, and now it's been good, and it's been actually good to be back on the field, and enjoying life and work in Singapore.
It can't be that different from Malaysia, because you were in Malaysia for a bit, and how different is it in terms of culture, in terms of food? It has to be the same.
Yeah, it's climate-wise and food-wise. Quite similar, if not almost for 100%. I mean, same ethnic groups as demographics are a little bit different, but culture is the same, food is the same. Sometimes think that Malaysia probably a little bit more laid back, and that's about it.
You're right.
And a football culture in Malaysia.
Right. We'll talk a little bit about that later on. Now let's go back a little bit, because you played professional football, back in Holland from 89 to 2002.
No, from 89 to 13 years.
Yeah.
I had to stop a little bit before the end of my last contract. Yeah.
Because of injury, or?
Yeah, I had a Achilles injury.
Right.
Had already 3 surgeries, and at the last one, that was in Amsterdam, the doctor said, I don't think you're going to play professional anymore. I played another 17 games, but that was it.
What position were you playing in?
I was a number 6, holding midfield.
Nice. Okay, you made the transition to becoming a coach, right?
Yeah.
And what was that like? The transition bit, because obviously you said you got injured, and the doctors told you, no way. How was the transition like?
Well, maybe because I got injured is one of the reasons that I went into coaching, because it fell a little bit in my lap, because I was still on the contract with the club. And because I was still on the contract but I couldn't play anymore, the first team head coach asked me to analyze our next opponents.
Right.
And the reserve team coach, who was a former player at the club, he said, do you not want to help me? And I said, yeah, sure, I'm here anyway.
How old were you?
I was 31 at the time, yeah.
Okay, nice.
Yeah. So, but if things maybe would take its natural course in terms of me finishing my contract or finishing my career, at the time I was thinking never to work in football anymore, because I didn't feel like coaching. All these 25 different egos in a dressing room all think they, but what made me think was this opportunity was thrown a little bit in my lap, and I think a year before, this was before I got injured, so maybe 2-3 years before. I remember I was in the dressing room, and we played very bad in the first half, and the coach was shouting how bad we were, and we didn't work hard enough, all the general cliches that actually don't help you move forward. And so maybe that was a little bit cheeky, but we're from Holland, so we say what we think. So I said, that's all good. You spend now 10 minutes on the first half, but how do you think we should go in the second half? What should we change? and he actually was so pissed off he stormed out.
Wow.
So I went to the magnet board and went in front of the players, and funny enough, after the game, in Europe and especially in Holland, not so much in England, you have these players' lounges in the stadium where players can bring their family and friends. You get like 4 tickets each, and so there were maybe 100 people, and my parents were there. And so I was sitting next to my parents, and then one of the players came up to me and said, "You should become a coach." And I said, "Why is that?" He said, "Well, you went to the board in halftime, and I finally understood what probably the coach was saying before."
Yeah.
And actually that made me maybe think about it. Maybe why not? But still had something like, I'm not sure. I've done this for 12 years, day in, day out, and maybe do something completely different. And I also wanted to travel at least for a year after I quit, and that's what I promised my wife as well. But then, because my career got cut short, it went like that. And then, to come back to your question, the transition was actually tough, because I was like any former player, played the game. So who's going to tell me anything about football and about coaching? And then I realized coaching is something completely different, and you got to learn that. And having played the game at the highest level in Holland, there's absolutely no guarantee that you become a good coach as well. And my first day on the course, I remember I had to do one specialized for former pros. I looked at the instructors, and there were 3 or 4 instructors who were all former player, former coach, but not successful as a coach.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, and saying to the guy next to me, well, what are these guys going to learn, as they failed at the job themselves? And you know what? I learned a lot from them, and maybe not successful as a coach, but again, instructor on a course is also a different skill set, and they were extremely qualified to do that. So it made me learn a lot about myself and about football and about coaching.
Listen, Peter, we've just into 6-7 minutes into this podcast, and I've gotten so much from that bit, because it's a message. It's a very important message as well that goes out. The first one is, you spoke about the part where the coach was going on and on and on and talking about the problems at halftime, instead of trying to solve the problem.
No solution.
No solutions. That's absolutely brilliant, because I think I was reading about Arsene Wenger, and it was said that the players only have 7 minutes with you, roughly out of the 15, about 7 minutes, and after that their mind's gone. They won't listen to you, right? So if you go on and on and on about the mistakes and what have you, you're gone. You lost them. Perfect point. And then going back to, because I wanted to ask you about this thing about elite players being good coaches. And you answered the question already, right? Because
it's a myth.
It's not a guarantee. It's not a guarantee.
No, and we all hear people say that, but I'm fortunate enough I can say that because I'm also a former professional. People usually say that and think, yeah, that's easy because you didn't play, or you didn't play at the highest level. But it's the truth. I've seen the worst, the best players being the worst coaches, and Holland is also a good example of that.
What does it take then? Like in terms of, I'm not talking about elite players becoming coaches, but what does it take, that special thing that becomes that make you a coach?
Well, first of all, and this is specifically to coaching. What I realized that, I know what it should look like, but I didn't have a clear philosophy on how I wanted to play in all these 4 main moments that you have in a game of football. I can watch a game of football and say what's going wrong, maybe, but for me to have a clear vision and philosophy on how to play, and then even more important, you couldn't say more important, because I think a vision is vital. There's too many coaches who actually don't have it. But if you don't have it, what do you train then? But now to implement that vision with 24 or 25 players, where I would be maybe good to talk to the holding midfielder and say, step to the left, step to the right, or whatever, be off the shoulder. But that's something different. That's where former professionals are good at.
Yeah.
But to implement the vision and philosophy, throughout a team, and how do you train that? What does it mean for your communication to people? Because it's much more than just training. That's all the things that I realized, and then I thought, I really need to learn that. And to be honest, I often compare it to a driving license. Even going through the courses doesn't mean that you will be a good coach.
It's very, very complex. Coaching and teaching, it is so complex, because
it's like a driving license. You get your license doesn't mean you're a good driver. You know, you're qualified to drive now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're still not Max Verstappen.
There was this course that I did, and I just went in and I spoke about this, and I just right off the bat I told them, take your books and throw it away, because that book is not going to help you further down the line, and
could even go against you, to be honest.
Exactly, because sometimes you learn through your experience, making mistakes especially, and that's so important.
Well, again, there is a similarity with driving. I think the courses are extremely vital, because they give you maybe some framework and what it should look like.
Yeah.
But then, you need that to be able to analyze and evaluate yourself.
True.
But then what makes you a better coach is coaching.
Perfect. You became a TD soon after. Like how long after becoming a coach you became a TD of the club itself?
Yeah, but to be honest, I think I was 3 years TD, but the first 2 years I combined it with coaching as well. I think it had something to do with I spent 12 years at that club, 6 years as a player and 6 years as a coach and as a TD. But also as a player, I remember talking to the board. I think we were fighting relegation, and it wasn't going that well in the match. And then I looked around me and I saw that we had 6 players that were actually loaned out. Oh, sorry, we loaned them.
Yeah.
There were 2 players that had in their contract, should we relegate, they could leave the club transfer free. One of them is actually the US coach at the moment. And I was thinking, okay, so this game actually only really matters to 2 people in the field. That's me and the right fullback. The rest, those 2 probably benefit from the relegation, and the other 6, they probably don't care. And then there was no balance in the squad. So I had a few conversations with the board, and I said, look, the whole squad that we have is not balanced, and you expect here 11 players to fight for their lives this afternoon. You're not going to get that.
Yeah.
Plus, there were 12 players out of 20 running out of contract, no left footers. There was absolutely no players being overpaid, and then what happens next year.
Right.
The guy who has a good season wants to earn as much as. So I said, this club, you run yourself in the ground, and obviously that was criticism. But a couple of years later, they asked me if I wanted to be as a TD in charge of and right. Make sure that there is plausible clauses in contracts, that there's a logic spread in when they run out, these kind of things. That's how it went. Yeah.
Listen, the way things gone on for you, and the way you're saying this as well, it kind of like it's a little bit natural to you, the planning part, the thinking ahead, long term, 5 years, 10 years down the road, and thinking behind the scenes. It seems like it comes a little bit naturally to you.
Yeah, because I've been so long in football, and I see a lot of clubs being short-term successful, and then being more or less deceived by the results. But it's based on quicksand, not based on proper planning. And I'm a strong believer, also as a coach, that that's why I also always talk about performance rather than a result, because I think having a plan and stick to it, and that doesn't mean you're blindly focusing on your plan, because you also need to evaluate if it still works for you, if it's still relevant, if it's still actual. But I think sticking to a process will lead to results that are based on something substantial,
right,
and also something that you can leave behind. If you leave, you at least make sure you leave the place in a better spot. And and that was the thing that I strive for at any club or organization I was. I want to make sure, because in being successful, you also depend on other people. But I didn't want. I wanted to make sure that at least every job I took, the guy who came after me had it easier or came in a better spot. And I think you can only do that if you have, obviously not by yourself, but definitely not without a proper plan.
It's a great way to look at things as well. You know, wherever you go to, you know, whatever. It could be a 1-year contract, it could be a 3-year contract. You want to make sure that you've done a good job so that when you leave, it's not become worse, but it's actually a little bit better or much better. I think that's very important.
I think that's the least that you should strive for.
Yeah. Now I want to fast forward a little bit, because obviously you were the TD of a club structure. How about the FAM then? When you took over as the TD of FAM, what was the brief to you? Like, were there like objectives, like KPIs set out to you?
No, not really. I spent a weekend with TMJ, who was then the president.
Yeah.
And because it was definitely not number one on my wish list, because with the Australian teams I played a lot of games in Southeast Asia. We were part of AFF as well with our youth teams. So I know how hard it could be to be successful in a Southeast Asian country because of a lot of other dynamics around you, and the language barrier maybe at some points. Because I think in my job, if you can't communicate effectively, you lose a lot of your power is a nasty word, but your strength. And for Malaysia, English not a problem, so that was an advantage. And for me, the one that pulled me over to do it was actually TMJ, because there's so many dynamics. But when there's royalty like TMJ involved as a president, you know that a lot of other people, if you think this is essential to move forward, this needs to happen, and you have a short line with TMJ, it's a little bit easier to become successful. And without it, you might even burn your reputation, and that means a lot to me, to be honest.
Yeah, well, you can't say you can't really say no to royalty.
No, but for me it was as well. If I had a feeling this is absolutely vital that this happens, and I have to go through all committees who either I wouldn't say stop that or want to put their mates in, whatever thing it could be. They knew I have a straight line with TMJ, and if it and I didn't use that too often, but that people knew what was enough, and that helped me be a little bit more be more effective, and also be more transparent in what I was doing or what we were doing.
Yeah, and again, obviously with TMJ there, of course, things are done. It gets
that's another thing.
That's very important, especially if, let's say, you know that this is what you want to do, he gets it done. This is what you want, he gets it done. Obviously for the good of the nation. That's a good point as well. I just want to touch on, what did you do exactly, like specifics that you did there in Malaysia?
For me, the most important thing is was in Malaysia was if we want to be more competitive internationally, so we want to improve the results and performance of our first national team. That obviously starts with better players and better youth development, and that starts with better coaches. So for me, coach education was the most important thing. So we restructured the courses, changed the content, and wrote a development plan or a DNA, not only based on how to coach young players, but how to play and why. And then, how do we coach them? How do we develop them? And that has to do with competitions and all these type of things. So that was, and then that plan becomes more or less the compass for all your coaching courses. You can't just have, let's say, a syllabus out there and put it on your internet and that's it. No, they become a vital part in our in our coach education, especially in the grassroots C and B. And A as well, not the pro, because pro is usually senior football, and I think playing style should be up to the coach, because he's being paid to get a result, and then football becomes a matter of opinion. In youth football, you should stick to facts, and then there's only a certain playing style that develops players. But that same, let's say in youth development, I see if you accept that youth development is about development of players rather than winning games, and I'm not saying winning is not important, because it is. We all want to win.
Yep.
But if you accept that it is the most important thing is developing players, then there is only a possession-based style of football, and playing out from the back is going to develop players that you need to make a difference at senior level. I mean, you cannot develop players technically as much as you can do that with a long balls type of football. That's not my opinion. That's a fact, and it's common sense.
Right.
At senior football, it's different.
Yeah.
You can get a result in various ways, but then the desired outcome is the result, not getting better.
Right. It's very, very fascinating, talking to you about this, and I can talk to you about this for 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, especially when it comes to the coaching bit and coaching education as well. It's a key thing. Now, you spoke about the syllabus part, right? So you guys started from scratch, and how did you get this going with a group of coaches, senior coaches? How did that?
Well, the first thing I did, I took probably 3 months to watch games at every level, like, let's say Malaysia Super League, elite youth level, grassroots, and also let's say non-elite level, 16 years old. So what is there a common denominator that I see, and one of them was coaching not of the standard where it should be. In other words, I think our youth, they're only young ones, they deserve better. And that was not a surprise, because that's not a problem only in Malaysia. I think it's a problem in Singapore, and it's a problem all over the world, to be honest. Even in top countries, you still see, when you go to a amateur game, youth game on the sideline, you still see things, and you think, how the hell is that possible that this happens to young players? And you wonder why there is a dropout of 70% or at the age of 12, 13. It's because of us not good enough. It's as simple as that.
I just want to say this, and it also boils down to the reasons why you're coaching. I totally.
Yeah, maybe.
It's because some guys, and just do it because we've got no choice. That kind of thing to make money. Of course, you want to get paid. It's simple as that. You want to get paid coaching, right? But the reasons has got to be trying to improve these guys, these boys who come under you, the girls who come under you.
But even if you do it out of necessity, then you would still hope that people would think, look, I've been young once, I maybe haven't got what I should have gotten, I'll do it better, right? Hopefully, and maybe that's not the case, and in the end, also for coaches, as much as for players, to get to your potential, obviously there need to be a good education, so you get a good platform, but you also need opportunities now, and I think they are as like a talented player. Obviously, you need to have the potential. But then 70% also comes down to your attitude,
of course,
whether you reach your potential or not. But everybody seems to forget the third one. You need to get an opportunity. I reckon there's a lot of coaches out here in Singapore who are extremely talented, but might not get the opportunity or the platform to develop to that potential because we miss them, or we don't know them, or they're not well connected enough.
Most often than not is the last part.
Yeah, sadly enough, because we stick to what we know in football.
True.
That's why we're a little bit backwards at times.
And I want to ask you this because you've been there and you've done that in terms of the coach developers part. How did you guys when you were in Malaysia, how did you guys get these coach developers whom you think are good enough, potential to be good enough to coach these younger coaches, coming up the ranks?
That was actually a tricky part, because you work with existing instructors and developers,
right?
And they need to be able to deliver this new, because changing a syllabus or doing things better with youth is not only changing the content. Actually, the biggest problem is maybe not even the content, it's the way we deliver. And the way we deliver, if you want to convince or make coaches believe that, it comes down to the quality of the instructors.
Yeah.
And a lot of them obviously work for 20-25 years delivering AFC courses. And what we did, there's no point in changing a syllabus if we don't upskill the instructors. So we got everybody in, gave everybody a fair go, and then we knew that this might be an issue. Some of them were good, some of them needed time, some of them probably never good enough to deliver this and inspire young coaches coming on courses. So what we did was we had an open B license, where I said to the head of coach education, on any course that we run now, let's look at talented coaches that we think might actually have potential as an instructor.
Right.
And we picked 3 or 4, maybe even a little bit more. One of them is actually the current head of grassroots. I'm very proud of that.
Nice.
And we put them together with the instructors who already done it with 25 years, and then they got a little bit scared, because some of the guys who just came off that B license were better already.
Right.
And then it became a little bit, okay, this is about raising the bar. This is not about me talking down to people, one-way traffic. If I'm going to keep on doing what I've been doing now, I might miss out. And then I'm actually very proud of the group of coach developers that we had and that we kept and that we
weeded out.
But okay, that sounds tough and it sounds nasty, but look.
It
it's
has
what
to
the
be
young
done.
players deserve.
They
deserve the best. The coaches that want to become a coach, they also deserve the best in terms of instructors, and they don't. They deserve passionate people who know what they're talking about.
Exactly. Brilliant stuff. Singapore football, right? When you first came down, obviously with BK last season, Balestier Khalsa, what were your first impressions of the football? League standards, players.
It was actually a bit similar to Malaysia. My first impression there. And I actually still stand by that. I think the level of the players is at times a little bit underestimated, because I think the level of the league is as much a reflection of the quality of the players as it is a reflection of the quality of the coaches. And before I because this requires obviously a little bit of context. I still think again that comes down to coach education, because in the end you do what you know. It's as simple as that. And I think there is a lot more possible in my opinion. And so in the beginning I was a little bit worried about the level and not really impressed, but now working with these players and seeing them on a weekly basis also in the opponents, I actually see a lot of talented players. And even in youth games, but yeah, they need a little bit better also from the coaching side of things, because this is not a disqualification of coaches, before people get me wrong.
Yeah.
They are a product of Singapore coach education, which I think has made a few changes, but is not there yet. I think they might have changed a little bit in the syllabus, but they also need to make sure that they upskill instructors and all these kind of things, and I think they're behind the screens working on that, and obviously that takes a while, but I think that there is actually a lot of talent, and why not? Because talent is not defined by your place of birth or your date of birth. There is as much talent here as there is in Holland.
Okay. Interesting.
But to get them to the potential, you need, again, opportunities, and that means competitions and quality coaching.
It is interesting you say that when you first came, obviously, right? Did you like get your coaches around together and then do what you have to do?
In Balestier Khalsa,
yeah, of course.
Before I spoke to the players, I spoke with the staff on how I wanted to play.
Yeah.
And I knew I took a massive risk with that, because I only had a short amount of time, and in the way I want to play, that's probably the most hardest route to choose.
Yeah. What did you do in terms of when you first came in, like made changes? Obviously before there was Akbar, right? What did you specifically do without giving us secrets away, obviously?
Look, for me, I'm not very, I'm quite open about what I do, and I think it's also not really rocket science. If you see the games, I think you probably can. For me, the most hard part was in the way I want to play. You need to be very confident, and Balestier Khalsa was of course extremely low in confidence. But I also had the idea that the players were capable of doing it, but not all of them. And that's the tricky part, because I also think you, as a coach, you have a certain vision on how to play. At the same time, if you ask people to do something they can't do, that's not smart either, and it's also not fair. But I still decided to do it, and then see. Okay, we'll see where it goes. And funny enough, players that you don't expect it from made let's say the biggest improvement, not because I asked them, because for them it was a case not asking them something they can't do. I asked them something they never done before, and they were 31 years old.
Example?
Well, for me, people talk about Daniel Go. I hope he's not listening, by the way, and I'm not talking about Daniel. People talk about Daniel Go, about Roya, but for me the most improved player is Madhu.
Okay.
As a central defender.
Right.
And I thought he's 31 years old.
Yeah.
And I looked at the games, two games before I came, and you know where we play, how we play, that starts somewhere, and that's usually in the back.
Right.
And it's important, and obviously not the field not really cooperating what we want, and I knew that was going to be could have been an issue as well. But I'm extremely proud of how Madhu has developed himself, and even in the last game where we spoke a little bit before, very disappointed of our performance, but I still have to make a exception for Madhu, who again played a good game.
Listen, if that is one of the satisfactions you get as a coach, when someone just, you make them believe, and then they improve just over time, and you get that satisfaction. You don't need anything else, and you see somebody improving. It's a wonderful feeling.
Well, actually, I sometimes say this on courses. If and I said it to a lot of the coaches of the national youth teams in Australia. If somebody has a career in football, and you sit in front of the television and you can say, okay, I work with this guy, that should make you extremely proud. But I think you need to do your work so well that if somebody at the end of his career get asked the question, who inspired you the most throughout your career, you want them to mention your name. And if that drives you, and it's actually something that drives me a lot, I think that's important, because as a teacher, I think you are a teacher. You're a coach. You work with young children, young players, who are only young ones, and we owe it to them to do it to the best of our ability. And what better prize you can get if somebody says he changed my outlook on things, or it could be anything. Not only football.
Yeah.
This guy made me think about things differently,
Yeah.
or I wouldn't be here if maybe I wouldn't have crossed paths because it that I think that's the biggest reward that you can get when you work as a coach or a teacher, I would say.
Yeah.
Because we work on a yearly basis with people, and we influence more people than other people sometimes in a whole lifetime. So we might as well do it properly.
Yeah,
You
you're
know
right.
what I mean?
Perfect. And see, you're talking about Daniel Gorgeous, and I hope he's listening, because he used to play for me in the school football, and this is what I used to tell him: do not beat the same player 4, 5, 6 times. You know, and I'm sure you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And listen, he has improved like just by watching him play, and he's been brilliant, right? He's been obviously you see him every day, and obviously he can improve even further. But that confidence he has right now is excellent. And I got to pick out that one game he played against LCS. Remember a couple of matches ago, and he was like stuck it into Harris and all these players, and they were like looking at him like, what's happening here? And I totally love that part. Fearless, so full of confidence, and as long as his feet stays on the ground, I think that's brilliant.
But Daniel is a great player to work with. He also does your head in sometimes. Maybe you recognize that too. But if there is one thing I think he wouldn't suffer from, is that he would get ahead of himself, or because he's very grounded, very keen to learn. And definitely is getting better, but I also think now for him the next step to be a regular in the national team, there's a few things that he really needs to work on, because these things make the difference at that top level, and that is playing with your face to your own goal. And then keeping the ball, just release it, move again, don't take too many touches, and his decision making in his final pass. There were a few moments again in the last game, but then again, I always say to them, if I can have a combination of Massa and Daniel, you would have an absolute top striker. Everything that Daniel is very good at, Massa should improve on a little bit, being more adventurous, running at players, and
right.
But usually the final product of Massa is very good, and he hardly gives the ball away when he faces his own goal.
Right.
Together they would make a great. But Daniel now again improved out of sight, but. Obviously need to make the next step, because I want him to become a regular in the national team.
It's funny you say that as well, and I want to say this as well, because I've been doing commentary for the last season as well, and I've never said this before. I'm so excited to watch Balestier Khalsa play today, this evening. We're going to watch this game, and never said that till this season. I think the way you guys go forward, and is that for the same reason we've got to talk about this as well.
I know what's coming.
It's defending, mate.
Yeah.
Right. And before you used to give what is this interviews pre-match, and you're always talking not about defending. You were always talking about managing the game when you were leading, and in a 90 minutes, obviously you're not going to attack all the time. You're always going to get attacked by the opponents sometimes as well. So you go in phases in the game. Let's talk about the defending bit, right? Because it's doing my head in as well. I'm sure it's doing your head in as well. And what is it? And we are not even talking about Balestier. We're talking about in general in the league.
Yeah,
what's happening? Come on, what's happening, Peter?
Well, it's definitely in general, because I see, for instance, Hougang playing against Lion City Sailors, and obviously being under pressure and playing deep in their own half. But you see a pattern of things. I see. I think it was the first goal. It was like Massa scored our goal, where he cuts inside. He's under pressure, and all of a sudden the player drops off. Anybody who can play with his head up in shooting distance, it means you're not defending properly.
True.
You need to make sure that they keep on playing with their head down. I see that sometimes also where we follow a number 9 that drops into midfield.
Okay.
We follow, and then all of a sudden we drop off.
Yeah.
The player can turn, and now you're in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
It doesn't matter who is free behind you if the player who has the ball can't play it. Yeah, I see sometimes even on television commentators say, it's so dangerous, they play with such a high line. A high line per definition is not dangerous. It's only dangerous when there is no pressure on the ball.
Right.
And I think look at the blocking crosses, and there is another. We had that in one game, and this is probably what sums it up maybe a little bit. We it was again against Galang, I think. The first game, I think Iqbal hits the crossbar and it goes up a very long, let's say it goes up 15 or 10 meters. And when it comes down, the player has a free shot on goal. And I see 4 players of Balestier looking, where is this ball going to drop? But it doesn't matter where it drops. You need to make sure that you're between the player and the ball and the goal.
Goal side.
So get yourself in that position and then see where it falls. So we are extremely reactive. We're not proactive defenders, we're reactive defenders. And as a defender, you're always in the disadvantage when you are reactive.
Yeah, and you picked out exactly a few situations there. Number one is when someone cuts in, for example, and then you actually in a good position, and then you just he puts his head up, and then you back off,
Yeah.
And the other one is the crosses, stopping crosses from coming in, and you still allow that distance, obviously the space and distance, and for him to cross the ball. And you talk about the rebound from the rebound. So what problem is this a mentality problem of the players themselves?
I think not allowing a player to have his head up within shooting distance from a goal, or for us it's even passing distance, not even a forward pass on our own half. It's as simple as that. That should actually be ingrained behavior, and you should be doing that without thinking. That should be automatically behavior, but that starts from a young age. But that's what coaching is about. Coaching is nothing more than changing behavior and changing habits, or influencing habits. So obviously these are things that we work on because you can sort of control. But you can only do that if you, and that's what I say a lot to my players, because what I notice in Singapore, a lot of players go through the motions at training. But I think you can only change habits if you train with purpose. You need to be constantly thinking about it, and then at some point you might not do that anymore, and now it's ingrained behavior. But with senior players that takes usually longer than with young players. Because there's of course for everything in football a golden age, and for ingrained behavior like this, it's when you're 10, 11, 12 years old. You don't talk too much about team tactics, but these things you can mention already. Are they tactical? Yeah, more or less they are. But you can already say to young players, whenever they have the ball in our half, make sure they can't look up and
Listen, these things that we speak about is so important, and players wouldn't understand this till they probably become a coach, because it's so very important, and we talk about this all the time, and it's even more dangerous when you say it should be ingrained and they're not doing it. And even if it's ingrained in them and then you're not doing it, it's worse, because but you're not doing it, you're lazy, basically, right? But if it's not ingrained as well, it's Tough one.
No, it is, and but I think it's probably one of the reasons why you see so many goals.
Yeah.
But I think there's more. There's also one reason why you see a lot of goals is that the distances between the lines is far more bigger than in any other game in a top competition.
Right.
And I heard somebody say about our game that the lines between the front and back are so are too much. Our distance is the least in the league. It's 44 meters on average.
When done your stats.
I do, because it's important to me.
Right.
Because there's another reason why we maybe concede goals. It's because if you play attacking-minded football, if you have a lot of opposition or possession in the opposition half, obviously you're vulnerable, especially in transition.
Yeah.
But I always say to my players that there is three things that we need to make sure happen. Because there's one good thing about if you know that you're vulnerable in transition, you can anticipate on your vulnerability. It's like, you had a night out or you were late and you need to wake up early and you're not sure whether you do. You anticipate it on and put your alarm clock on, And with playing possession-based football is the same. If you know that you are vulnerable in transition, you need to make sure that at least they can't play the first pass forward. So you need to have straight away pressure on the ball. If you know that you're vulnerable in transition, don't lose it. Then there is no transition. So to find the right balance between playing without fear and playing reckless.
Yeah.
So you need to limit the amounts of transitions, then make sure that you have pressure on the ball, and now you need to deal with the few times that they actually can play it forward, and that's your rest defense.
Yeah.
And I'm proud of the fact that we don't concede so many goals from transition. The last game where I can remember a game was a game where we conceded a goal in transition was against Lion City Sailors a couple of weeks ago with Balestier and I think it was Diego.
Yeah.
But even there, we could have stopped it. But Fabian ran in a straight line to goals rather than get in between the ball and the goal with Balestier. So it was also a decision-making thing. So I think we've more or less our transitioning is a lot better, because in the beginning we lost the ball and then the central defender was 80 meters behind, but that's a lot different now. But there is still moments where we switch off, where we we without playing well in the last game against Gai Lang. As a matter of fact, the first half I thought they played better on the ball, but you're still winning in the first half, and then the second half, our last line, our left fullback is completely out of position, and all of a sudden we panic a little bit again. And but it's a little bit of a pity, because I think defensively the last four games we have been better. But it doesn't show actually, because we got some freaky goals against. And, and I don't like saying this. I think also the VAR hasn't helped a lot in the last couple of games.
This is a fascinating talk about football and stuff like that, and it's very important as well. And it's important we talk about the possession football as well. And sometimes I feel that teams are so vulnerable when they're in possession rather than when they are not in possession. It's a fact, and that's what I sometimes do with my school teams as well when I'm coaching them. It's not when you don't have the ball, because it's easier to defend when you don't have the ball, sit deep and whatever. But it's when you have the ball that's when it's you're so vulnerable.
The most important thing is, especially for young players, if you want to be good defensively when you still have the ball, it's all about you need to have at least 5 players. Depends a little bit how you play, but we have 5 players that should be thinking when we have the ball, are we in the right position?
What's the next?
Where do we lose it? So that's our 6 in general, our holding midfielders, at least 3 of our defenders, probably 1 fullback is involved, and your goalkeeper. And your goalkeeper needs to coach it, because he's the one who needs to make sure that he has that picture in front of him. And then you need to have pressure on the ball when you lose it. but you can only have that if your lines are compact when you still have the ball, and I think that's where a lot of times is the issue.
True.
And that's why there was so many games in the past going up and down, because the distances are so big between lines. But yeah, they are extremely important.
Yeah. Going forwards, what's your next move for BKFC, and you staying on for BKFC next year without?
We haven't discussed that yet. The
Right.
only thing I can say about that is that I thoroughly enjoy working with this group of players, although they do my head in on a lot of occasions too.
Yeah.
No, I really enjoy it, and,
Yeah.
and to be honest, I have never ever, even not as a player, really thought too far ahead about anything. In my, I just want to enjoy what I'm doing at the moment, and take things as they come, and yeah, for me it's important. This job is not finished, and it's nice that people talk about you halfway during the season that you play well, but we all know as a group of players and with the staff that there's still a lot of room for improvement. And obviously we've made a few changes, and it's nice that we've created a little bit of a buzz around the club again. At the same time, the players know how hard they have worked for that, and that it took almost 8 months to get there, but you can also throw it away in 2 weeks, because that's football. And we need to make sure, and I want to make sure that that doesn't happen until it's December.
Yeah, you're only as good as your last game. That's what they say.
Yeah,
It's
100%.
exactly.
Yeah.
Peter, thanks for being here on the first episode of the Football Talk episode. Thanks for being here. I think it was an absolutely brilliant episode, and I wish we could go on, because I think we can go on talking about football, because that's
We'll call it part one then.
Yeah. Thanks again for being here, and
thanks for having me. Yeah.
and good luck for the rest of the season.
Thank you very much.
Hope to see you guys score more goals and concede less, obviously. Yeah. This has been the episode, the Football Talk episode with the Silverfox Hustle podcast. Till we meet again, cheers.